Je vais commencer avant de te laisser la parole. Très bref. Bonjour à tous et merci d'être là. Donc, nous avons le plaisir aujourd'hui d'accueillir Martial Marbouti, qui est donc chercheur CNRS dans le laboratoire Régulation spatiale des génomes, dirigé par Romain Cossul à l'Institut Pasteur. Martial a fait sa thèse au CEA dans le laboratoire de biologie des cyanobactéries dans le laboratoire de Franck Chauvat. Il a soutenu en 2009. Ensuite, il a rejoint le laboratoire donc, régulation spatiale des génomes à l'Institut Pasteur, où il étudie les relations entre organisation spatiale des génomes et la physiologie chez les micro-organismes. Donc, ces études l'ont conduit à développer des méthodes moléculaires et bioinformatiques très originales pour l'étude des consortiums microbiens naturels issus de l'environnement. Et donc, il va nous parler aujourd'hui de ses travaux sur les interactions phage-bactéries dans des communautés environnementales complexes. Donc, merci beaucoup, Martial, d'avoir accepté notre invitation. Et without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for the invitation. So yes, today I will present you the work we have developed from 2014 and try to make you the whole story of the what we have called contact genomic, and that we have applied a new technique usually used to to study global organization of chromosome in different organisms. And we have hijacked this technique to apply it to a complex environmental population with the idea at the end to be able to study phages-bacteria interaction in environmental population. So just for a short introduction, because I like to really to put metagenomic in the context. So exploring microbe is a very long story that started with the first microscopic observation from Anthony van Leeuwenhoek that make this nice drawing of what you have shown through his microscope. And it's been a long time after before we obtained the first taxonomic of bacteria done by Kohn and Haeckel. That was really the beginning of the microbiology, and from this date, microbiology really increased a lot, improved a lot, especially with Koch and Pasteur and the culturing techniques that appear and allow to really extract a microorganism from their environment to study them directly in the laboratory condition. Then there is the discovery of virus, then the phages during the 20th century with Stuart and Derrell. And finally, for me, the whole panel was finally reached with the first phylogenetic tree of life and the new apparition of a new branch in this tree of life, thanks to notably to the work of Carl Woese that described for the first time the new branch of the archaea. Then finally, we obtained the first complete bacterial genome in 1995, and in 1998 there is the first use of the term metagenome that was applied to the functional analysis of the collective genome of soil microflora, which we term the metagenome of the soil. So what is interesting in this chronology is the fact that at the beginning we observe microorganisms directly in their environment. Finally, we extract the microorganism to try to work on them in laboratory condition. And at the end, now we are trying more and more to restudy the microorganisms directly in their environment, because we know that microorganisms used to live in consortia and have a lot of interaction with other microorganisms. And so the metagenomic is the study, it's what we can see in Wikipedia or for other or for publication. Metagenomic is the study of genetic material recovered directly from environmental sample. So it's clearly the application of modern genomic techniques that allow to study directly community of microbial organisms directly in their natural environment. And so we bypass the need for the isolation and lab cultivation of individual species. But the fact that we bypass this this need of isolation also lead to the fact that we have less information, and so we need new technique to study those microorganisms and those organisms in their natural environment. So this is a picture taken from a paper from Quince et al. Just to present you the classical metagenomic analysis we have now. So starting from a sample, which could be a microbiome or something else, we try to extract directly the DNA from this whole community that have different organisms like archaea, but also yeast or bacteria. And then we sequence the DNA and we obtain generally huge data sets that we have to process to have an idea of what are inside this microbiome. So generally there is a step of processing of the data, and then we can try to have an idea of what are inside this microbiome by assembling the short sequence into contigs in order to have a taxonomic and functional annotation of the consortia of the microorganisms. We can also compare it to some reference databases. And finally, the idea is to obtain an idea of what these consortia of microorganisms are coding for. So we can have an idea of the genes inside this consortia, the proteins that could be produced by this consortia. And then you can do some differential analysis of the microbial species, compare this to metadata information, like if you have a timeline series, you can compare the variation of the microbial species, but also the functional pathways that are encoded by this consortia, this kind of stuff. One of the main problems of metagenomic analysis is that generally it's based most of the time on the reference databases that are quite biased to organisms that we are able to cultivate in laboratory conditions. And there is also the fact that we obtain tons of data about organisms, but don't know exactly which organism encode for which function. And so we try more and more to try to deconvolve the genomes, the different genomes present in the sample collection in order to reconstruct the different genome of the different organisms present in the communities we are studying. So what metagenomic can bring to the area? So metagenomic clearly can help understanding what is a genome, a species, and with the tons of data we are having now from metagenomic analysis, clearly the definition of a genome or a species is slightly different now than what it was 20 years or 30 years ago. It can also allow to have a better idea of the diversity of life, especially on Earth. This is one of the papers that have made I would say that, yeah, that was a good a new view of the tree of life, even if the tree could be sometimes not clearly stated, because there is some problem with this tree, but clearly it shows that the life on Earth is more diverse than what we thought at the beginning, especially in bacteria, but also in archaea. Metagenomic also now help us to understand and to decipher the interplay between multicellular organisms and microbes, because all multicellular organisms used to live in symbiosis with some microbes and some consortia of microbes. And it's also allow us to understand how microbial communities work and how stable they are in time. And more, there is a new view of different environment, like the microbiome of the roots of the plants, the microbiome of the ocean, the microbiome of the human body and the human gut especially, which is clearly relevant for clinically relevance. There is tons of new study now that explore this different consortia for microorganisms we found in their environment. And more, there is also a new branch of metagenomics that is being developed, is the metagenomic of viruses. And from the last year, there is really a lot of different papers that have shown that viruses, the virosphere is clearly diverse and have a lot of impact on microorganisms. So there is different papers that show that at the beginning we thought that viruses could be are usually small and with small genome, and more we found giant viruses, giant phages. There is also some phages that infect bacteria and construct nucleus-like structure to produce the virion during the infection. And so more and more we are interested in viruses in the biosphere. But one of the problems of metagenomic is the fact that as we do not isolate the microorganism, it's more difficult to work on them, and we have lost the link between the different genomic entities like the virus and their host. And one of the projects we have with this, with the thing I will show you, is to refine this link between viruses and the host, the microbial host of those viruses. So yes, if we want to understand an ecosystem and to understand environmental microbial population, we need to characterize the different entities, the different genomic entities present in the ecosystem, as well as their relationships. And this requires to be able to assemble, or at least scaffold, the different genome or DNA molecules present in a given sample. So this is the development of the metagenomic analysis for the last years. So you start from a set of reads, which are generally small reads of from 100 to 300 base pair, and you try to assemble those reads into larger piece of DNA, which we call contigs, okay, which will be the initial assembly of your metagenome. I won't talk about assembly because really it's not my field of research. It's clearly more mathematical problem, and I generally use state-of-the-art software to do this step. And so you obtain these contigs, which are generally quite fragmented, really small, and you try to sort these contigs and to put them into bags or puzzle that will hopefully will show you the different genome and the different microbial species present in your sample. So this is the binning procedure. So it's not a scaffolding, it's really you group the contigs, and then you can study the genomic content of the different organisms. So the last software used to do this step are generally taxonomy independent binning algorithm. At the beginning of the metagenomic, a lot of software use taxonomy to try to bin the different contigs into the different organisms. But now more and more, the software use a taxonomy independent algorithm that is generally based on composition, so the GC signature of the different genome, or the abundance based also. So if you have different time point of your metagenome or different metagenome, you can try to deconvolute your genome by grouping together, by binning together contigs that have covariation of their coverage in the different sample. And the last algorithm are hybrid, meaning that they use the two components here, the composition and the abundancy, to try to deconvolute and reconstruct genome from metagenome. These different algorithms have lead to really a better understanding of the microbial communities, and have allowed us to obtain a gene catalog of the human gut microbiome, but also of the Earth microbiome, the ocean microbiome. It has been used in many studies, and we are now really more aware of the different genome present in the different ecosystem we know on Earth. But it's now also applied more and more to virome, and there is more and more publication about the Earth virome, and it's nearly the the same pipeline. The people are just extracting viral particle and try to assemble them and to bin them and to study the viruses. One of the main problems with viruses is that they generally don't have taxonomic markers that allow us to clearly classify them and to really study them properly as we have for microbial genome. But this actual binning software or binning technique have some limits. First of all, generally, if you want to obtain good results, multiple samples are needed. So it can be a problem when you don't have a multiple sample, or if the metagenome is quite difficult to obtain. There is also some local sequence divergence that can also cause some problem when you look at the GC signature of the genomes, as well as the coverage. Those binning techniques that are usually based on GC content or GC signature and abundancy covariation, there is some problem with the horizontal gene transfer and the mobile genetic elements like plasmid, phages, and transposon, because they won't covariate with the rest of the genome, and they won't have the same GC signature. And this technique do not allow to have a link between the different genomic entities. So we have developed a technique we call meta-3C or meta-IC, that is a sequence composition independent, but also coverage independent binning method that is only based on proximity contact experienced by DNA molecule. So for that, we have hijacked this technique called chromosome conformation capture, 3C. And the idea of the 3C at the beginning was to study the global organization of pure microorganisms cultivated in laboratory conditions. It was a technique developed in 2002 by Job Dekker in the lab of Nancy Kleckner. And so the idea of the technique is to obtain a global view of the mean organization of the chromosome in 3D of the chromosome in the cell. So the first step is a fixation step with formaldehyde in order to really freeze this 3D organization and to trap into DNA protein complexes, DNA fragments that are spatially closed in the 3D space, in the 3 dimension, but not necessarily on the linear sequence of the DNA. Then you extract your DNA protein complexes and you digest it. You digest everything with a restriction enzyme, and you then submit your complexes to a ligation into diluted condition in order to favorize the ligation events between DNA fragments that have been trapped in the same complexes and not between different complexes. Okay. And finally, you can purify your DNA, and the idea is to obtain a genomic library we call a 3C library, which is composed of chimeric fragments whose relative abundance will be directly linked to their spatial proximity at the beginning of the experiment when you apply the formaldehyde that will freeze and really freeze the architecture. And so the step after now, thanks to the development of sequencing technologies, is to really process this library for massive parent sequencing. So by the true extremity, with the idea of counting the number of times one fragment of DNA has been trapped with another fragment of DNA. And you will store all this counting into 2D table entry, to a true entry table. We call a contact matrix. Okay, so it will be a table where here you represent the chromosome, and on the y-axis you also represent the chromosome. So here I will present you an example with the chromosome of Bacillus subtilis. Bacillus subtilis harbor only one circular chromosome here. And so you will really count and store inside this contact matrix the number of times each fragment of this chromosome has been trapped with all the other fragments of your chromosome. And of course, you replace the value by a color code, here ranging from white for rare contact to red for frequent contact. So your contact matrix is symmetric, okay? Everything on this part is the same on this part. And the first thing you can see on this contact matrix is the strong signal you have in the main diagonal here. And it just shows you that the DNA with its protein is a polymer. And so even if you are, if you are close together on the linear sequence, you will have a lot of interaction. And you can see also on the main diagonal that you have different. The main diagonal is not really linear, and you have some structure here. And we have made during my postdoc, we have studied that, and we have made a different analysis, and it shows that the chromatin and the DNA of microbial, but also of higher eukaryotic, are organized into a small topological domain, not so small for some organism, but into topological domain. And this domain are mainly the organization of this domain, especially in bacteria, are mainly driven by the transcription activity. And you can also see here in this contact matrix a secondary diagonal, meaning that in fact the two chromosome arms of the circular chromosome of Bacillus subtilis are interacting a lot. They are tightly interconnected in Bacillus subtilis. You can also see a signal in the corner here, which is only the fact that the signature of the fact that you have a circular molecule. So this is the main diagonal, but the corner is part of the main diagonal. Okay, this is a circle. So we have applied this technique to different bacteria, and we have shown that there is a huge diversity of organization in bacteria, of chromosome architecture in bacteria. So here you have the example of Bacillus subtilis, but also of Vibrio cholerae, which have two circular chromosomes that interact, and we have shown that the interaction of the two chromosomes are linked to the synchronization of their replication. In E. coli, you cannot see the secondary diagonal, and so E. coli is quite different from other bacteria, and there is no interaction of the two chromosome arms of Escherichia coli. We have also made some study on Streptomyces avermitilis, which harbor a single chromosome but linear. But we have shown that even if its chromosome is linear, we have a connection between the two chromosome arms. And finally, Corynebacterium glutamicum, which is more like Bacillus subtilis. And so, yes, this is the different architecture we have found in bacteria. And so the summary of this result is the fact that there is great diversity of bacterial chromosome architecture. We have shown the central role of the coenzyme condensin protein like SMC and MUCB in this architecture. And finally, the main finding is the fact that the three-dimensional organization of chromosome reflects somehow the cellular activity, and that there is specific three-dimensional signature of some processes linked to DNA like replication, segregation, or transcription activity. We have also shown that there is also some specific three-dimensional signal of phages activity, and it was one of the points to study this, to use this technique to study phages and bacteria. And when we have seen this different contact map, we were thinking that maybe we can use this huge signal in the main diagonal and this 3D signature to apply the 3C technique to heterogeneous population and not only homogeneous population. So the question was, could we use 3C data and chromosome signature to characterize heterogeneous population? The idea behind this is the noise signal will be sufficiently low between the different cellular compartments to be able to characterize the different genomic entity present in the different cellular compartments of the population, and also to still be able to characterize inside one compartment the different DNA molecule present. So as a proof of concept, the first experiment we have done was to mix 3 bacteria harboring different genomic feature. like Bacillus subtilis with only one chromosome, E. coli with one plasmid, and Vibrio cholerae with the 2 chromosomes. Mix the different organisms and do the 3C experiment directly on this mix of 3 bacterial species. And here is the contact matrix based on the reference genome for the moment. We have obtained after this first experiment. And clearly it shows that the noise signal between the different cellular compartments is sufficiently low to be able to characterize the different genomic entities and the different cellular compartments. Bacillus subtilis is quite easy to characterize here, but we can also, for E. coli and its plasmid, we can clearly see that here the plasmid interact a lot with this huge molecule here, which is the chromosome of E. coli, and so it's easy to reattribute the plasmid to this cellular compartment. And for Vibrio cholerae with the 2 chromosomes, we can clearly see that the 2 chromosomes are quite distinct. We can distinguish the 2 chromosomes, but we can also see that there are more interaction, and so they should be put in the same compartment. So starting from this ID, we have developed a pipeline. So you start from a metagenome and an assembly of your metagenome. So you have a set of contigs. You construct a 3C library of the same sample, and you map your 3C reads on this set of contigs, which allow you to construct a network of interaction between the different contigs. And now, if you remember the experiment with the 3 bacteria, the idea is to be able to characterize in this huge network some subnetwork of interaction. Contigs that will have more interaction within these subnetworks and with the other subnetwork you can characterize. And for that, we have used algorithms that have been developed at the beginning for social network analysis, because it's clearly the same problem. If you look at social network, you have tons of subnetwork in this huge network of interaction that are the group of friends, the group of work, people that live in the same city, and this kind of stuff. And so this is a field of research really active, and we have just used the Louvain algorithm and hijacked this algorithm to characterize inside this huge network the different subnetworks present in our initial network. And the idea then is to be able to scaffold the different genomic structure based also on this 3D information to reconstruct the different genome. So this is the global pipeline we have developed. So now I will present you the first stuff we have done using this pipeline. So we have started from one microbiota sample from a single feces from mice that we have taken in the Pasteur facility. So we have done a shotgun library of this sample. We have split the sample in two, made a shotgun library, perform a de novo assembly. So you can see that we have a huge set of contigs, highly fragmented for a global assembly of nearly 600 megabases. In parallel, we have done a meta3C library of this sample, and using the parent information of the meta3C library, we map our 3C sequences into this de novo assembly in order to obtain the network of interaction between the different contigs. So here is the contact network. So the network, the contact matrix is another representation of a network of interaction. So here is the representation of this network in 2D matrix. You see here in X and Y axis the different contigs, okay, from the contig 1, the biggest one, to the smallest one here. And in this contact matrix, the contigs are clearly in the order of their size. And now if we apply our pipeline, our meta3C pipeline, and we reorder the different contigs in function of the subnetwork they belong to, you can you see that we have this square that appears in the main diagonal that represent the different genome or group of genome we have been able to characterize for this metagenome. So for this metagenome, we were able to characterize a huge number of beans, but and nearly around 250 genome or group of contigs harboring each more than 500 kb of sequences. So that should be mostly bacterial genome. You can see that those group of contigs, those MAGs, so the MAGs are the name for metagenome assembled genome. And so each group of contigs that harbor more than 500 kb of sequences will be called MAGs. And you can see that those MAGs represent the vast majority of the DNA sequences we have in the initial assembly. So we were quite happy because we were able to clearly scaffold or at least to bin most of the DNA sequences of the most of the contigs we have obtained from the initial assembly into putative microbial genome, starting from only one single sample. It's possible also to validate the bin of the MAGs by using, for instance, we use Checkm, but there is other software that do this kind of analysis. Those software are based on the presence of single copy of taxonomic marker. It means single copy gene present in most of the sequence bacteria in one copy. So there is 43 genes known to be present in one copy in most of the sequence bacteria. And so this algorithm, this software generally look at the genome you provide them and look at those different taxonomic markers, and then they can tell you if all these 43 genes are present and if they are in single copy or in multiple copies. So it can provide you information about the completion. So it's the set of the 43 genes, but also of the contamination. It's when you have multiple copy of one of those genes or multiple of those genes. And for this single experiment, we have been able to obtain real good genomes. So some of them are still contaminated, but we have obtained, don't remember exactly, but we have obtained a lot of genes, of genomes that were complete and not contaminated. Then in order to compare our method to other binning methods that generally use multiple samples, we have done a timeline experiments by following two mice during several days. So we have sampled each day. We have sampled one fecal matter, one feces from a mice, and perform a metagenomic analysis of these 20 samples. So we have done a cross assembly of these 20 samples that allow us to obtain a global assembly of huge size, highly fragmented as previously. And we have then made a comparative analysis of our binning method with classical state-of-the-art algorithm like MetaBat or Concoct. When we compare our methods to other binning algorithms, we clearly compare favorably. I mean, the size of the bin obtained is nearly the same for the different algorithm. Concoct generally made bigger bin, but they are quite normal. In terms of completion, we are less complete than Concoct, but more complete than MetaBat. But this less completion is mainly due to the fact that Concoct provide MAGs that are highly contaminated, whereas our algorithm or method clearly provide genomes of microorganisms that are highly pure, not contaminated. And in terms of number of putative genome we are able to characterize, we clearly are able to characterize more genome, to bin more contigs, and to obtain a complete genome. I mean, at least high quality genome, meaning that they have at least 90% of completion and less than 10% of contamination. And we are able to provide more genome using this technique. So one of the main points of this technique is the fact that it allows you to work on single sample, But even when you work on multiple samples, we are able to obtain better results than classical binning algorithm. This technique also allows to go further into the analysis of metagenome, and especially it allows you to characterize genome structure of larger bin. So here I present you an example of one of the genome we have characterized with this technique. So we have obtained a genome which was the bin number 40. This genome encompasses around 4,000 contigs for a size of around 4 megabases. So you have here the contact matrix of this genome, and you can see that it's quite a mess. It's the same problem. The different contigs seems to be disordered from each other. And so we were faced to another challenge that was how can we scaffold these genomes? Can we use the 3C data to scaffold this genome? And for that, we have used the 3D signature to improve limitation of scaffolding. So I come back on the E. coli chromosome here, and what we can see in this contact matrix is the fact that the information regarding the collinearity of a sequence is in fact contained within its 3D organization. Indeed, the contact frequency we can see on this contact map is directly a function of the genomic distance between two DNA loci. So if we look at the contact frequency, in fact, the DNA contact follow a power law distribution, okay, in function of the genomic distance. So we can maybe use the 3D information to infer the genomic distance between DNA region and try to reconstruct genome based on this 3D signal. So this is the global idea. We have developed an algorithm called GRAL for genome reassembly assessing likelihood. And imagine that you start from a genome that is not fully assembled. So the number of contig or scaffold you have is more than the number of expected chromosomes. And if you build a contact matrix of this genome that is still a draft genome, you will obtain this kind of matrix. Okay, so it's like the one I've shown you before. It's a disorder contact matrix. And if you are able to assemble the puzzle and to reconstruct the main diagonal, the main signal in the diagonal, you are able to assemble the genome and to solve the puzzle. So we have developed this algorithm that use 3D contact and polymer physics prediction to explore the different space of genome structure. So the algorithm will try to will propose different genomic structure by reordering the contigs in the contact matrix. And if the genome structure proposed is more in agreement with the 3D data and the polymer physics prediction, it will be retained, and the algorithm will work like that, and we propose at the end the genomic structure with the highest likelihood compared to the 3D information and the polymer physics prediction. So I will present you, I'll make a stop if it's possible. Okay, no, it's not possible. Yes, it's possible. I will present you an example with the genome of Trichoderma raceyi, which is a fungi. The genome was published in 2008, and the draft genome contains 76 contigs. Okay, so you will see that this is the contact matrix we have built using the draft genome, and you will see how the algorithm is working. So the algorithm will start by destroying the different structure, by destroying the genome, and then we'll try to reconstruct it based on the 3D information and the polymer physics prediction. So I'll try to make it work. Okay. So first, it starts by destroying the different contigs, and then it will reconstruct the genome based on this 3D contact information and the polymer physics prediction. And you can see here the different contigs, the different scaffold proposed by the algorithm, and the number that is clearly decreasing, the number of scaffold here. It shouldn't be contig, but it's contigs, and the likelihood that is increasing. So at the end, we obtain a genome with the highest likelihood, a genome structure with the highest likelihood harboring 7 large scaffold, which was quite cool because it was expecting to obtain 7 chromosomes. I have to say that this algorithm is not deterministic, so we do not tell him what is the number of scaffold he should obtain, and it was really a good result to obtain 7 scaffolds for this organism. So you can see here the published scaffold in 2008, the structure here, and what we have published after. So we have obtained 7 chromosomes. And thanks to the 3D signature we have for specific stuff, we are also able to characterize the centromere, because the centromere in fungi cluster together, and so we have specific signal for that. Telomeres also cluster together in fungi, and you can see here the signature of the telomeres. The other interesting stuff is the fact that here the scaffold published in 2008 are now disrupted into different scaffolds. And I must say that most of the genome we have worked with harbor problems in their scaffolding step. And so we generally correct the different assembly because they are not always true. Now we have developed a new algorithm because we got problem with a larger and more complex genome. And we have now developed a new software called Instagram that is more really faster, and you can apply it to a more complex genome. You can find it on the GitHub of the lab. We have now a Docker for this software, and so it's really easier to install it, because at the beginning we got problem with it work on GPU, and we got problem with the different library needed to use this software. And we have applied it to more complex genomes. So we have applied it to the whole chromosome assembly of a genome of 220 megabases. You can see here the contact map at the beginning, and after the software, I've proposed clearly more highly quality chromosome level assembly of this genome. So we can apply now this, come back to the metagenome, we can apply now our software, our algorithm to our different mags or bean we have obtained from the metagenome. And so applying that, we are now able to scaffold bacterial genome directly captured from their environment, this was a real good result for us, because maybe now we can have, instead of using CheckM and the taxonomic marker, to validate genome from metagenome, I mean genome assembly from metagenome or mags from metagenome, we can maybe now use the 3D information to validate the genome we obtain using our technique. So here you can see that we have the strong signal in the main diagonal. Okay, yes. So we have a nearly complete signal in the main diagonal. There is nearly no interruption in this main diagonal, meaning that it seems that we have obtained the whole molecule. Okay, we have a signal in the corner here, so we have obtained a circular molecule. We can also have a look at the origin of replication, and we can see that we have a skew of coverage from the origin of replication till the terminus of replication. So it seems that this molecule is multiplying at the moment of the experiment. And we can also see that we have a signal in the secondary diagonal, meaning that the 2 chromosome arms seems to interact a lot, like what we have seen in different organisms like Bacillus subtilis or Corynebacterium. So it was a validation of the approach, and the fact that maybe in the future we can use this polymer physics and this kind of approach to validate the genome proposed from metagenome, and not use taxonomic markers that are generally biased due to the fact that it's based on databases that are always biased. And so you can apply that to different metagenome, and from the metagenome I've shown you from the mice, we can apply that on different beans. And so we have been able to scaffold dozens of different chromosomes from bacteria, and we have seen different genomic architecture, and clearly it reflects the diversity of architecture we have found in bacteria. And now I will switch to phages, because it was the purpose of my of my presentation. And yes, what about phages? For that, I will present you the last result we have obtained starting from a cohort of healthy human patients. So we obtained 10 healthy donors from the biobank of the Pasteur of Institut Pasteur. So we have studied. So it was fecal matter from 10 healthy donors, and the idea of this study was to study each microbiota of these different people separately, okay, by doing our approach like the metatricy, try to assemble it and to scaffold the different genome of these different healthy donors, but also in parallel to annotate the different phages contigs, have a look at the mags we have obtained and the characterization of their associated phage, and compare the result we have obtained between the different person, and try to see if we can see common feature of phages population inside different human gut. First, we have characterized the different genome present inside our microbiota, the human microbiota. You can see that we have been able to characterize more than 1,000 genome of high quality. Each time we were able to characterize at least or to bin at least 50% of our different assemblies. So clearly our method on single sample work pretty well, even on a complex microbiota from a human gut. The different genome we have obtained summarize well the composition of the human gut microbiota. So with a huge thorough presentation of Firmicutes and also Bacteroidetes, but also some actinobacteria. And now we are characterizing some archaea also. And now we are working on reconstructing the different genome and scaffolding the different genome of these different mags we have obtained from the 10 healthy donor. Okay. And then we have a look at phages classification. So for phages, for the moment, what we do is starting from the assembly, we use state-of-the-art software like Vibrant or Virsorter to characterize contigs as phages. Okay, and then the algorithm we use, the Louvain algorithm, and the pipeline we have developed, Metator, allow us to obtain an association score between the different contigs and between the different contigs. So for the moment, we use a quite stringent association score, about 90 over 100, to say that a phages, a contigs, is associated to a bacterial genome. So using this threshold, over 9 and 4,188 phages contigs, we have been able to attribute more than 6,000 of those contigs unambiguously to a bacterial genome. For the other contigs, most of them were never associated to a bacterial genome, so it could represent free phages or phages that have for which the host is not present in the metagenome or not in sufficiently abundancy to be able to characterize the host of these contigs. And a really small part of these phages contigs were associated to several bacterial genomes. And we are working now on this kind of phages that could maybe infect several bacterial species. But for the moment, we still have some problem to clearly define who is the host and what is the noise signal for this kind of contigs. So I will focus now on the phages contigs that were clearly associated to only one bacterial genome and that represent most of the phages found in our different assemblies. So we are able now, starting from 10 different samples, to provide a huge view of the infection pattern of the different phages. So here you have the 6,000 phages contigs. We have classified by using marker from specific phages marker. And here you have the phylogenetic tree of the different bacteria, their host, and we have defined for our knowledge the biggest network of interaction of phages with their bacterial host. We have validated this network of interaction by using state-of-the-art prediction tool and also CRISPR prediction tool and also through sample comparison. It means that when we found the phages that infect one bacteria in one of our sample, sometimes we can see the same phages, and we validate our approach by the fact that one phages that infect one bacteria in one sample, we found the same phages that infect the same bacteria in the other sample. And this is summarized here in these 2D plots. So the first conclusion was the fact that phages of the human gut was highly specific. Okay, they generally infect only one bacteria and nearly one species. And then we have looked at the genomic proximity, the homology of phages. We have computed the homology of all the phages we have characterized in our 10 sample here. And we have plotted these distances between the phages. Okay, the more you are homologous, the more you will be close to 0. And 0.3 is the score for the really no homology at all. And we have computed the phage distances in function of the distances of their host. And what you can see here is the fact that when phages, we can characterize a population of phages that are highly homologous here, but they always infect bacterial genomes that are highly homologous. You can barely see a population of phages that are homologous, but that infect different bacteria. So what it means that the fact that phages generally, when phages are homologous, they infect the same kind of bacteria. So they are clearly specific. We can also characterize a population of phages that are quite divergent, but infecting the same bacterial organism, but we cannot see this kind of population in here for phages that are highly homologous infecting the same bacteria. So it seems that the evolution of phages, there is some barrier for the evolution of phages. Phages do not switch easily from one organism to another, and there is sort of continuum here for the evolution of phages. So phages highly homologous infect the same bacteria. They can also be non-homologous but infect the same bacteria. And here you have the main population. It means that all the phages are quite divergent and infect different bacteria. The other thing was to look at the abundancy of the phages compared to their bacterial host. So here you have the phages. The conclusion was the phages of the human gut are mostly lysogen, which was something quite known. But we have validated that with our approach and on the 6,000 association we have between phages and bacteria. So here on this graph, you can see here the log2 of the coverage of the contig harboring the origin of replication for the different bacterial genome we have characterized. And on the y-axis, you will have the log2 of the coverage of the phages. And what you can see is that clearly most of the phages have a coverage that are the same of the coverage of their associated bacteria. But we can also characterize here in red and dark red a part of the population, nearly 5% of the phages contigs we have characterized, that clearly exhibit a higher coverage than their bacterial host. It means that those phages seems to be actively replicating compared to their bacteria. We were not able to say if they were killing the bacteria because we don't see correlation between the growth of the bacteria and the coverage of these phages, meaning that we see bacteria that seems to be actively growing and that have phages actively replicated. So it was difficult to say exactly, but it was the first time we can concomitantly follow phages and bacteria within a complex population. And finally, we were clearly interested. Okay, we'll try to fasten the end. So we were interested in one family of phages, the crassphage family. So the crassphage represent a family of phages that have been discovered in 2014, and it's one of maybe the most abundant bacteriophage of the human gut. So it was at the beginning we really don't know what was this phages, but it was assembled from the team of Robert Edwards and by Bas Edutil, and they have characterized also this huge genome of 100 kb. Okay, and in the last 5 years there is a lot of paper published about this bacteriophage. So it seems that this bacteriophage is highly abundant in the human population. I think all the human population have been harbor some one of these phages in their gut. It is linked also to monkey. They have proposed different hosts for this bacteriophage. It seems that this bacteriophage infects bacteria from the classes of Bacteroidetes family, but there is no clear host defined for these phages, whereas these phages can represent something like 90% of the viral particle found in a human feces sample. So this was something quite intriguing for us. So we were looking if these phages were present in our different samples, and we have been able to characterize different members of this huge family of phages. So here you can see a phylogenetic tree of the different phages we have been able to characterize belonging to the crassphage family. In blue here, you have the reference of the different phages already characterized by all over the world. So this family of phages is classified into 4 big family and some subfamily. And we can, thanks to our approach and in our different sample, we have been able to characterize all the hosts of these different phages. And it clearly validates the fact that the crassphage family is linked to the family of the Bacteroideaceae, and we have been also able to characterize at the species level 4 hosts of this different family. Now we are trying to look at the specificity of some subfamily of this crassphage family to certain hosts and this kind of stuff. Yes, we have also been able to characterize the fact that most of these phages are circular. You can see here the contact map of some of these phages, and we can detect a circular signal in the corner here, meaning that the contig is circular. So by using 3C data, you are able to scaffold the different genome of your metagenome, but also to characterize some topological feature of your contigs and try to say that one of the contigs could be circular and one other not, and this kind of stuff. So this kind of library, of metagenic library, harbor really a tons of information that can be used to characterize more deeply the structure, the genomic structure of complex environmental population. So in conclusion, I would say that DNA molecule collision provide a quantitative and objective measure to improve metagenome, but also genome binding and analysis, like scaffolding. It's well fit for a single sample, but it also provides really good results for multiple samples. By combining our 2 different methods, it allows to reassemble nearly full genome and their structure from metagenome, so from complex environmental population. It allows to detect and characterize small genomic entities. So now we are trying to develop algorithm to characterize circular contigs in order to characterize plasmids, but also phages. And we see that phages and plasmid are sometimes the frontiers between phages and plasmid are not always easy to characterize, and so the idea now of phages, plasmid structure entities are more and more popular. And finally, it will allow to unveil a really interaction between bacteria and their mobile genetic elements. Finally, to finish, now we are trying to develop our technique to apply it to environmental communities, because really fecal matter from mammals are generally quite rich in microorganisms. And now we are able to apply our techniques. We have made improvement of the protocol, and now we are able to apply our technique on ocean sample, but we are also trying to apply it in collaboration with Peru. We are trying to apply it to mountain and to soil microbiome. And in parallel, we are also developing control communities that allow us to improve the protocol, but also to improve the analysis. So we are now building mock communities containing phages, bacteria, and plasmid, and that allow us to improve our algorithm in order to detect 3D signature of phages or mobile genetic elements. Here you can see it was an experiment we have done with Bacillus subtilis, and you can see here it's a phages, and it clearly have a genomic signature different from the rest of the chromosome. And maybe we can use this genomic signature to clearly characterize prophages or actively phages or active phages. Here we have made an experiment with Pseudomonas and an infection by a phages. You can see here it's really little, sorry for that. But we are trying to see what is the resolution of our method to characterize integrated phages, active phages, replicating phages, or circular molecules, this kind of stuff. All the tools I've shown you are freely available on the GitHub of the lab, so you can see the IC box. It's the stuff that allow to construct the contact matrix, but also the software for the scaffolding and the software for the binning for the metagenome. So this is the lab. So Romain is here, and for this work, really, I work a lot with. So Amaury is the new PhD student that work with me on ocean sample. Theo and Liam have developed the Metator pipeline, and now Amaury is developing the pipeline. And Hervé Marinelli and Liam Baudry have developed also the algorithm Graal and Instagram. So, and thank you for your attention, and if you have questions, it will be a pleasure for me to answer it.
Thank you, Martial, very much. So yeah, the floor is open for questions. If you want to ask questions, maybe you can also put your camera on, so Martial feels less lonely when you answer a question.
I don't know if I can see the camera and keep my screen, so that's okay.
Go ahead, Jordan.
Okay, thank you for your nice presentation. I got some questions. So the first one is, I want to go back to the fact that you have phage contigs that were not associated with bacterial genome, right?
Yeah.
So could it be related to the different life cycle of a phage, lytic versus temperate phage, for example?
Yes, for sure, it could be linked. The thing that if phages is attacking a bacteria and is lysing the bacteria, there is several possibilities not to be able to detect association of these phages with this bacteria, with this host. First could be the fact that the bacteria is killed and not really abundant in the metagenome. So if we are not able to assemble the genome of the bacteria of the host, we can't be able to characterize the association between the both. So one of the limitations is still the assembly. If we are not able to assemble a genome, we won't have it in the data. And after, it could be also free phages. It could be different stuff. But for the moment, yes, we have to develop still to develop our approach and to know exactly what we are able to detect as it. But we are also able to detect phages that are really more popular than their host. So I think we are able to characterize lytic cycle also, or at least replicating its cycle.
Okay. And if I can ask my second question.
Yeah.
So do you try to just isolate phages, extract the DNA sequence in order to be in genomes and to look at that?
For the moment, but yes, it's something I really would like to do, to try to isolate viral particle in parallel and compare what we obtain in the viral particle compared to what we obtain with the global metagenome. But yes, clearly it's something we have to do.
Thank you.
Bernard. Julien.
Yeah, I was wondering if you compare the 10 microbiomes that you have from 10 individuals, how big is the overlap and how big is the difference between the individuals?
In terms of composition, so with 10 it's difficult to make statistic, but as far as I know, we obtain clearly classical for each individual. We obtain classical microbiome signature from human, and there is some publications that show that there is some enterotype for different human. You have the enterotype 1 with more abundant actinobacteria and this kind of stuff, and we found this kind of stuff. And after, in terms of overlap, we have obtained nearly 400 overlap. I mean, phages that we found in different individuals, and at each time, if we found an homologous of the phages in another individual, the host was clearly the same. So we found the same host in the two different individuals. So we have a good overlap of the data between the different samples.
Thank you.
I also had a little question. You mentioned, oh, maybe I can put my camera as well. You mentioned that with the meta3C analysis, you can sort of have a view of the cellular activity of the population. I was in one of the earlier. Do you keep that level of analysis in your metagenome analysis? Like, do you have a signature when you assemble of if it's actually an active population or replicating, or if it's sort of in a stasis or something like that?
For the moment, we still use only differential coverage. I mean, generally in metagenome analysis, what you look at is the difference between the origin of replication contigs and the terminus of replication, and you just do a coverage to have an idea of the growth index of your bacteria. And for the moment, we've only done that. And it's something, yes, we have clearly have to do, and we would like to develop, try to scaffold the stuff at the growth index of the bacteria and see if we can see some specific signature, 3D signatures that will allow us to know what is the physiological state of the bacteria. But no, it's still something we are working on, and I think there is still a lot of work to do with because it won't be easy to. Because the problem of this technique, the 3C technique, it's a mean of the population. It's really it's a median of what you can see in the population. And so if in your population you have some bacteria that are in a stationary phase or like a stationary phase, and the same bacteria, you have a subgroup of this population that is actively replicating, you will just merge everything, and so the signal will be destroyed. So it's not so easy to be able to go back, especially to the one particular physiological state, except if the whole population is in this. The conclusion was.
So that was the case with your first analysis. They were like exponentially growing cells where you were following the exponential growth.
Yeah. When you have a pure population, it's easier to be sure that all your population is in the same state, physiological state. With metagenome, it will be difficult. But yes, it's something we really want to try, but it's not something I think trivial.
Thank you.
Thank you for your very interesting talk. As you mentioned, we can, maybe you can use metatraces for determining the host range of plasmid, for example, or the other mobile genetic elements.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how could behave broad host range bacteriophages in your tools. Is it possible for you to determine if you have a narrow or broad host range bacteriophage?
Okay, for the to detect it, the bacteriophage need to infect the different bacteria. So I won't be able to say if the bacteria is not present. I won't be able that the bacteriophage is able to infect it. And for the moment, we still have problems with bacteriophages that seems to be able to contact different bacterial genome. It's still something we are working with. So I cannot say exactly if a phage is able to infect different genome, different bacteria. But for what we have seen for the moment for the human gut, and it's something for the moment that is, I think most of the publications say that, the phages of the human gut seems to be quite specific. But maybe, yes, with the ocean, we hope to be able to characterize phages that are able to contact different bacteria. But for that, we need to have more sample.
So when you say specific, it's specific to a species or to a strain?
Yeah, for the moment, we are at the species level. For the strain, I cannot tell you. It's something we have to work on also. But characterized strain is not also trivial from metagenome. Mm-hmm. But for the moment, yes, it's specific for one of the genome we have characterized. Each time, most of the phages only contact one genome.
Okay. Thank you.
I have another little question. What are the limits, in fact, of the technique? Because it seems to be able to do pretty much anything from any environment. Do you have like the detection limits? How small a sample can be for you to actually manage to process it?
So one of the limits will be the same as the metagenomic limit, is the assembly size, clearly. So if a DNA sequences couldn't be assembled from the shotgun library of the beginning, our 3C data won't be able to see these sequences, so we won't be able to. So it's always the same. It's a question of abundancy, clearly, in the metagenome. Other limits could be also the fact that this technique needs to resample the stuff. I mean, you need the sample. Fresh sample is better. We have done stuff on the frozen sample, and we lose somehow the 3D organization when we work with frozen sample. It seems that with the time, stuff is the protein and the DNA seems to stop interacting. The limit could be also the price. I mean, it's not as cheap as a shotgun sequencing. And in terms of abundancy, of complexity of population and density of population, now we are able to apply it on ocean sample. So the last time we filter 40 liters of water from ocean, and I couldn't see any pellet of bacteria, but we are still able to obtain DNA from that. So clearly, the limit should be something like 10 to the 8 organism. So it's not so important when you sample ocean, you obtain this kind of amount of bacteria. But as an example, in human feces, it's something like you are more about 10 to the 9 per milligram of fecal matter. So it's just full of microorganisms. The mammals' feces are just full of microorganisms. The soil also would be a problem and a challenge. And we don't know for the moment. We are able to extract and clean this data from soil samples. I hope we will be able to combine that with nanopore sequencing, virome sequencing, and with all the different data. I'm pretty sure that we can obtain a good view of one environmental community.
Just with this question, maybe I have a last question. If, for example, could we imagine it could be applied to or help decipher when you try to sequence, let's say, a small animal or you know, like not a microorganism, but something a little bit bigger that has gut, and for which you need to assemble a genome that you don't have, for which there is no reference. Could these techniques be used to sort of clean up, in fact, the genomic sequencer that we can have for an animal to clear out anything that is microbial?
Yes, we are working on sponges and other organisms like that. Yes, to try to remove bacterial sequences from the scaffold or the assemble of the eukaryotic genome. Yes, I'm pretty sure it's something that could work. Because clearly, when you are not in the same cellular compartment, you do not have interaction. For instance, we have done an experiment with a mix of yeast. We are not able to reattribute the mitochondrial genome to the nuclear genome. It means that really, if you have a membrane between the different genomic entity, you cannot say that this DNA molecule is in the same cellular compartment, which is not exactly the same cellular compartment. But so for bacteria and microbiota, it should be the same. You can clearly say, okay, no, this DNA sequence shouldn't be in this genome because it's not. There is no contact between them. So it should be, yeah, I think it's quite good result.
Excellent, thank you. I have no more question. Does anybody else have a question for Martial?
Yes, please.
Yes, sure.
So thank you very much for the presentation. I may have a naive question because I'm more a phage person than a genetics person.
Right.
Phage is also composed of RNA.
Yeah.
Do you think your method could be tested on? No?
No, unfortunately, no. Yes, it was one of the limits. I haven't said. Yeah, we are only able to characterize for the moment double-stranded DNA molecule. So there is some technique now that allow to characterize, for instance, RNA hub in eukaryotic cells. So they try to map or to obtain a 3D representation of which RNA contact which RNA, but this means that you need to introduce a new step to transform your RNA into DNA, and you need a special ligase also because RNA and DNA generally do not well ligate together. So no, yeah, it's something. Single-stranded DNA phages are not characterized, and RNA phages are not characterized, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, because that would be interesting to put into perspective with your observation that evolution, right? Like one phage, one host, and
yeah, it'd be so cool. Yeah, really. But yeah, if I find something one day, I will tell you. But for the moment, I have not. I don't know how to do that.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting.
Thanks.
Any other question for Martial? No. So we're gonna finish that. Martial, thank you very, very much.
Thanks a
It's
lot.
very interesting talk, and I'm sure it inspires a lot of things in this community. So talk to you soon, and thanks again, and everybody has a good day.
Okay, bye. Thanks.